Robert, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Glad to be on the show, Mike.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed. I mean, we really are in a terribly bad place here. Nobody seems to be quite willing to admit it. Suella Braverman touches upon that, particularly with the view that, you know, our culture might be at risk, that people coming into this country in such huge numbers are liable to change the face of this country. I mean, these are statements of fact. These are things that are already happening. I was talking to William Clouston in the first hour of the show, who talked about parts of Britain which are now segregated and becoming more segregated as every month goes on.
Indeed, there is a danger that we're importing so many people from, in a sense, failed states whose attitudes aren't quite as liberal in many cases as we have in this country. So we have a very good thing in Britain at the moment. We have a long history of individual liberty, limited power of the state, and people accepting other people in their lives, and a live and let live attitude. Some people from other nations don't share the values we have. Some cultures are not as liberal, not as open and tolerant as we are. And with more people we take in, there is indeed a danger, and this can be seen. There have been indeed cases where migrants have come into this country and committed terrorist atrocities because, of course, they find that the freedoms that some people enjoy in this country absolutely objectionable. And this is something that's been spoke about by Home Secretaries for quite some time. David Blunkett, a former Labour Home Secretary, spoke about the problems with social cohesion, that there's so much immigration into some areas that they cannot literally cope, and people who were previously may well have been very tolerant will be less tolerant going forward of new arrivals. There comes a point where a critical mass is reached, where things can no longer be acceptable to those who are already here, those who already enjoy the benefits of this country. And taking in more people, of course, it has an effect on the economy. It lowers wages for the least well off. It lowers productivity because we're just relying on cheap labour. But there's also a cultural question and a social question as well that needs to be addressed. And we cannot continue to be taking people, particularly young men, who indeed may find themselves alienated within the society, forced to work in the black economy, and this can create a whole host of social issues going forward. We need to be alive to them. We need to be aware of what may happen, and the good thing that we have in this country would be indeed threatened by excessive immigration. And I'd say we passed that level where we indeed need to preserve what we have and enhance our culture and enhance the prospects of those already here, rather than relying on those to come in and fill jobs, fill positions, and indeed change the face of the country, change the culture of the country from being one of being tolerant to one that may not be so tolerant. And of course, let's not just forget the pressure on public services and people indeed operating in a criminal environment in some cases.
Well, that's right, because, you know, we still don't know who a lot of these people are who are coming here illegally. We still don't know what they're coming here to do. They say that they're coming from certain countries. They say, she's basically made the point that it's not good enough simply to say, you know, I fear persecution because I'm gay or because I'm a woman. It doesn't necessarily follow that therefore we should suddenly grant asylum. You know, the lefties will all say, oh, but, you know, we have to take our fair share of the people fleeing war-torn countries. Well, why exactly? I mean, there's nothing written down in the British Constitution that we have to be some kind of, you know, island of sanctuary for people who want to come and live in a better country than the one they're born in.
Well, many of these people are indeed economic migrants.
Right.
And that's the key issue. It's a pattern of migration across the world where predominantly young men are seeking employment opportunities abroad, and a lot of the money they earn will be sent back home to their families, to their parents or their wives back home. Of course, many of the young men don't have married families as yet, because of course, so they're free to travel, free to take opportunities and to try and better their lives. Of course, many will be put into the black economy, but we've taken enough already. We are an overcrowded Ireland. Britain itself is overcrowded. England itself is even more overcrowded when it comes to the population density of a major country. We have the highest level. We cannot continue to take in more people, build on the green belt, put more adults into schools, pretending to be children as part of the immigration game they're playing. and of course they've crossed safe countries to get here. Right. They've arrived in the European Union. They've travelled across many different European Union countries. Are they saying that the European Union isn't acceptable for them to live in? Surely they can remain in their country that they've arrived in, should they be genuine asylum seekers, but many are simply not. They're simply coming here to work, to try and find some opportunity that they can't have in their home country. But that's actually damaging for the country of their origin, because they're the best and they're the brightest, they're the most motivated. Perhaps they should be staying at home, building up their own country, rather than coming here and lowering wages for the least well off.
Yeah, exactly right. But when you also see what's going on in other parts of the world, specifically in the United States, where the southern border with Mexico is now literally practically a war zone, with so many people trying to break through illegally, and the border guards fighting in vain to sort of stop them coming through. But I'm told now that there's reports from that part of the world that people from sub-Saharan Africa are coming through the Mexican border to get into America. So they're travelling somehow into Central and South America with the purposes of finding their way into the USA, which I find extraordinary. Plus, you see the numbers coming now from North Africa into places like Lampedusa in Italy. I mean, there is a global phenomenon going on here.
Absolutely, yes. It's the same across the world. And in the United States, essentially, their immigration policy is being run by the cartels, who are people smugglers, as well as taking part in other criminal activities. But illegal immigration is indeed big criminal business for them. And they're driving this. And some people in the United States are absolutely unwilling to tackle this problem. They could indeed seal the border. America is a powerful country. They have the resources, but some people are just making the country open to immigration, just as, in a sense, they are, because they want the cheap labour. There is indeed a desire for this amongst some quarters that want businesses wanting cheap labour to come into their country, and the bogus reasons for people's immigration, claiming that that they may be children, or claiming that they belong to some protected category and therefore they have the right to come in, is indeed bogus. We need to call them out on this.
Well, exactly, because I don't believe anybody who tells me that these asylum seekers, as they call themselves, legal migrants as I call them, coming into to Dover on a small boat, I don't believe that they're coming here to contribute to our society. You know, they're coming here, if they're going to work in any sort of situation, it's likely to be in very low-paid, low-skilled jobs. If they're going to bring family with them, eventually that's going to become a negative to the economy. They're not going to be paying enough tax to make it worth our while to even put them up for a couple of years, which is what's been going on as well. You know, so the economic dividend is nothing, if not negative.
Indeed, what we need to do is we need to recognise the criminality of what's happening. That's partly being done. They're making legal entries into this country an offence. But of course, they need to go further. They need to be returning migrants, instead of having our authorities and the aid agencies and the RNLI essentially doing the job of the people smugglers for them. We need to be returning them. We need to patrol our waters properly. We need to be returning people to France or their country of origin ultimately. And of course, going after those who are supplying the dinghies, which are incredibly dangerous to travel on, and facilitating this. We need to treat it as a law enforcement and border security problem. That's the only way, and we need to tackle this as a criminal enterprise, which it is. Of course, some people are coming here for the very best reason. They may want to benefit their lives. Well, good for them, but they can do so somewhere else, because in a sense, Britain is overcrowded and Britain has enough pressures at the moment. We have a debt to GDP ratio that's around 100%. We have problems here in this country. Our interest payments on the debt owed is higher than the education budget. Can't be afforded to be diverting resources unnecessarily away from where they're needed.
Right. But on the sheer numbers alone, though, it's unsustainable, and it's going to cause huge problems for Italy. I mean, in Lampedusa, it's overwhelming for such a small place, and apparently the Italian government is actually calling for some kind of interregnum from NATO to try and block all these boats from coming, because sometimes there's more than 5,000 in a day crossing.
Well, yeah, indeed. This is how people are treating it in America. They call it an invasion. The border security issue in the similar language is being used in Italy. There is a level at which people's goodwill runs out, and we're at that point in the United Kingdom. There's gone beyond that point in Italy, so they need to be taking robust action, and they need to be absolutely firm and returning people across the Mediterranean and stopping the flow of people that would actually be beneficial for all concerned, rather than taking thousands of people, more migrants arriving in Lampedusa than there are actually residents. That is absolutely unsustainable and a major problem. And Italy certainly needs to be a lot tougher on this. And those who are pushing this for their own reasons, thinking that it's to the benefit of countries in terms of more migration, or that somehow it's cultural enrichment, that's absolutely wrong. And they couldn't be more wrong, because indeed we have a great culture in this country at the moment, and we shouldn't be threatening it by taking in those who may or may not share our values. And the chances are, if they're coming from some of these countries that are less successful than us, although we've got problems, less successful than us, then of course we're endangering the good thing we have here.
Exactly right. Robert, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.